I'm Shepard Smith at the Fox News Deck. The specialist will begin in just a moment, but first, we've just gotten a brand new update, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, from the National Hurricane Center on Hurricane Irma. The brand new 5 o'clock update is this. The storm is still moving to the west-northwest at about 16 miles an hour. Maximum sustained winds still 185 miles per hour, so no change from the 11 a.m. Eastern Time report that we got from the National Hurricane Center. Still 185 mile an hour maximum sustained winds. That's a strong Category 5 hurricane. And at this moment, let's find out about the track. For that, let's go right to our chief meteorologist, Rick Reichmuth, who's live in the Extreme Weather Center. Rick, what have we learned?
Well, one thing that's interesting is the pressure has actually come down a little bit. So even though the winds are still at 185, the pressure has come down by about 8 millibars. So that means it is still a strengthening storm, not a weakening storm. And that's the bad news. Also getting very strong winds here in Puerto Rico now. We've had some over hurricane force gusts, but the worst of it is right there at that center of that eye. That's where those 185 mile an hour winds are. And hopefully they stay just offshore of Puerto Rico as well as the Dominican Republic. That will not be the case as it moves through the Bahamas, through the Turks and Caicos as well. There isn't really anything that we are seeing that will break this storm apart, other than it's hard to really forecast that a storm is going to stay at a Cat 5 category for that long. Longest that's ever happened is for 3 days. If you look out here at the forecast, it looks like maybe we are going to see that. One other thing, Shepard, we're still kind of, if you take the split the cone, we don't like to do that because anybody inside this cone could see the center of this go. Keep in mind, hurricanes aren't points either. They are larger items or larger storms that impact a lot of area. But if you were to now split the center of this, that puts a Category 4 storm very close right here off the coast of Miami sometime Sunday afternoon. I am not saying that's going to happen, but it is a possibility here. Also could go a little bit off towards the east, and you'll also notice if it stays here offshore, we could have a Category 3 storm somewhere up around the Savannah, Georgia area, maybe over towards Charleston, but you'll also notice that transition there from Miami up towards the Georgia coast. That would kind of be a straight line going right along the coast. This is very similar to what we saw last year with Matthew, which was a storm that hugged the coast the entire way and eventually made landfall in the Carolinas. This is kind of a similar path. We cannot say if it goes 20 miles one way or another still yet. In fact, we probably won't be able to do that until it's happening. So everybody here across parts of Florida watching this, but we also need to be watching in Georgia and South Carolina as well, Shep.
So everybody in the entire peninsula of Florida, everyone in that peninsula is still in the sort of cone of uncertainty.
Certainly. It is very possible that this storm still kind of takes a little bit of a western turn here. What we know is going to happen is that the storm is going to make a right-hand turn. Where that happens is very difficult for us to say at this point. So that means that it could be going still over the Keys, cutting right up, say, over Lake Okeechobee, up in towards the Orlando area, could go a little bit farther off towards the east. If it stays well offshore, that would certainly be the best news. Our model guidance isn't indicating that that's going to happen, but that's still in the possibility here. At this point, the best idea that we have is that eastern seaboard. Western side, probably you're in a little better shape. We'll certainly, I think, see less rain on the west side and probably less winds, but there will still be some impacts from it.
This storm moving at 16 miles an hour in forward progression, Rick, which means it doesn't sit and spin over an area for a long time. But is that forward progress expected to continue?
Yeah, I think we'll probably see a pretty similar forward pace. The thing that caused all the problems with Harvey was because the storm just stopped moving, and so it just dropped all of that rain. This isn't one of those storms. This is going to be an incredible wind maker, an incredible storm surge issue for wherever it does make landfall, and then rain right along the storm. But because the storm is moving faster, we won't be looking, I don't think, at, well, I know we won't be looking at anything 20 plus inches of rain. But we'll probably be seeing some spots that are in the 10 to 20.
I see that cone still shows the possibility of, though I know it's more remote, a possibility of hitting those mountains in Cuba.
Yeah, that's also in there. I will say this, it has been a little bit of an indication of maybe a slightly south trajectory before that right-hand turn. So yeah, that would happen. So I don't think we're going to have major interaction with mountainous landmass. That would be the island of Hispaniola, it would be Cuba. And that disrupts these storms a lot. These islands that you have in the Bahamas, those are just flat islands. They won't disrupt this at all. And the waters here are warmer than any place, any water that it's gone over yet. So the fuel is still there. One thing that does happen sometimes when you have a storm that's very close to center but is very close to a mountainous terrain, even though the center isn't over it, that mountainous terrain can still kind of interrupt it a little bit. So that would be one thing that could possibly cause it to weaken. But keep in mind, I think what we're going to see, we have a 185 mile an hour Cat 5 storm here, which is something we haven't seen in ages really, or in a very long time. It will probably come down to a Cat 4 at some point. And there is I think the way people start to think about things like, oh, it's weakening. Don't think that. If this is a Cat 4 storm, that would be our second Cat 4 hurricane making landfall possibly in the continental 48. That would be unheard of. We haven't seen anything like that happen here, and that would cause incredible damage. So at this point, we're looking at a major hurricane for at least probably the next 6 to 7 days, Shep.
Rick Reichmuth in the Fox Weather Center. Rick, thanks very much. The Weather Center up and operating throughout the course of this storm.